the first thing is just what are your guys' recommendations, especially for creating a schedule? Because I think that's one of the big things that stood out was creating a new routine. Maybe hopefully 2 weeks in, you've created some sort of routine. So maybe it's just best practices at this point. Virginia said nope. So yeah, I mean, measles or plums, you guys can.
Well, before we start though, I think that it's important to say I don't have this figured out. I've never managed a business or a household in a pandemic, and I feel like we can tell you what's been working for us, but I got to tell you, if I don't end up as an alcoholic by the end of this, it's going to be amazing. I'm going to be honest. Just honesty right now in front of Jesus. So
well, that's because wine with DeWine.
Right. I mean, the state government is literally encouraging early day drinking. But anyway,
exactly.
I just want to make sure that before we give you any advice, that we are every day trying to figure this out. And so perfection is, I feel very unqualified to talk about some of this stuff, but we have been figuring out schedules at least. Do you want to talk about the schedule?
Yeah, so when we had this nice week off where they're like, okay, this is your spring break, figure out a plan, the teachers are figuring out a plan, that sort of thing. And so we sort of decided, okay, well, it's a weird time, so rather than getting them up at their usual 6:45 and 7:15, their wake up time is 9 o'clock. And then we just sort of said, that's when you get up. By 10 o'clock, you need to be in front of your device doing your schoolwork, whatever it is. What's worked for Elia, and so we kind of split up the house.
Yeah, we've divided the house.
I have my office. I have my office in one room, and then Heather's sort of set up in our dining room here. And so I have Elia up with me, and then Isaiah's down with Heather. But what's really helped for Elia is she actually goes through her school day. So the first thing she does is science, and then Spanish, and she steps through all of those classes and checks in on what she has. Mm-hmm. And then around between 12 and 1 o'clock, I look up at her and go, okay, go get some lunch, go take a break, which I think is a good thing. She likes to take extra breaks, which we've given her grace on that. Yeah, so she's like, I really got this thing done. I need a break. My brain needs a break. Okay, take a few minutes. And so she does, and then she's back in it. And then around 1:30, 2 o'clock, she's pretty much done. It's been nice. The schools haven't been assigning an hour for every class. And then it's okay, what have you done that's active today? What reading have you done? What writing have you done? And so we sort of let them decide what's going to work for them. What's been interesting for us, at least, is they've gone out, when Elia's done, she'll go out and start playing basketball. And then 5 minutes later, Isaiah's like, oh, I'm going to take my exercise break too. And he goes out. So it's been nice to have them being able to have that time.
A couple things just that we have done, I think, have been kind of interesting. So we make them do, those one sentence 5-year journals. We've been making them, they're living history, right? And we've been talking to them a lot about that. Dawn and I both were in Washington, D.C. during September 11th. And we both, I think, often kind of, you remember the whole day, but you do wish you would have written something down. And so, so with them, we've been pretty insistent on that afternoon time. They really do have to read something, they have to exercise, and then they need to at least write one sentence about what they're doing that day. And we've also been kind of taking pictures about what life is like right now so that they have those kind of in the future.
It's a great idea.
What's it called again, Heather?
It's a 5-year, it's one sentence a day for 5 years. It's actually pretty cool, because then the other thing that I liked about the 5-year journal is next year they're going to look back at this and they're going to realize that every moment is very just this moment. Life moves on. God has a plan, and whenever they see what they were living through this year, next year, I'm happy that they'll be able to understand a little bit more about that plan, because I think that'll be really important in context as they get older.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Isaiah tends to write more than a sentence.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's like
It's just his nature.
right. Alaya has ADHD too, so I think that with her especially, she really does need those breaks, and she isn't going to write a book.
Right. Yeah.
So she's found creative outlets in other ways though. So that's kind of how we're dealing with like the schedule stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Would you talk about the importance of scheduling, like how it changes the tenor of the home?
Yeah. So most of you know we homeschool, so we have a schedule in place. So some of our life has not changed at all the way that it has dramatically for you guys. You're now living our lives in some ways. But it's challenging nonetheless. But so scheduling has been a huge thing for us, and it's been something that we're not perfect at, and it's something I'm always adjusting. And even every week new things come into the schedule that you have to adjust, but it's what gives us sanity, and it's what provides kind of a backbone for how we even go through our day. So it's not just this big chaos and like the kids doing whatever they want, and even me telling them, okay, you need to get all these different things done. That's not necessarily going to happen. So I think having a schedule where they can see it and they can visually, I don't know if you, Dawn and Heather, if you've actually printed it out, but for my kids, it's helpful to actually see it and to have it written out. I think Elsie and I talked about this. You were going to do one with like check boxes in it. So they actually had to check mark, I've done this and I've done this and I've done this. And, but I think not just thinking, for us, it's been helpful not just thinking about the school day, but thinking about the entire day and what that's going to look like. So our morning is a slower morning, but that's, I think one of your questions, Joe, was about time with God. And so we actually schedule that into our day so that we start with that. And it's after breakfast because of the way that people wake up and everything, but everyone knows that after breakfast, like that's quiet time, and that's your time with God, and everyone gets to spend that in their own space and in their own way. And so that's how we start our day, and that's how we carve out time. That's protected, I guess you'd say. And then, and we also have one of the things that the quarantine has provided for everyone now is that you're home for most of your meals. And so we always have breakfast together. We always have lunch together, and we always have dinner together. And so I think one of the things that the healthcare crisis has provided for families is an intentional time and space to have together, and to not let it just ride out and just sit in front of the TV watching your dinner. But hey, we can actually have really sacred time together, face to face, that maybe we didn't have before. And so that can become a part of your routine. So not just talking about making sure that they get their schoolwork done and having, which is really, really important, but what is our family? What do those rhythms look like as a family that you can put in your schedule? Do you want to add to that?
No, I mean, Aaron's the keeper of the schedule, clearly. I mean, in my normal work life, my schedule is more dictated to me by outside things and people that want to meet. I don't have as much control over that, but I do want to reiterate. I think kids' cognition, they process things much better when not only they hear them, but they see them as well. And so we've clearly seen fruit from that. The kids just seeing something in writing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, we have ours posted on the wall, so the kids know what's next. And but I'm also one that's like, routine's important. I also like to mix it up too. My kids know this, and they'll barter with me. They'll be like, hey mom, can we do read aloud first today? Or can we have free time because it's going to rain this afternoon? So can we have our free time now? Or like you guys talked about exercise time. And so was that yesterday? It was going to be a beautiful day in the morning, and then it was going to rain. And so I'm willing to do that. Some people are more rigid and like, no, we have to do it in this order, and that's fine. But I'm definitely one, and I think that helps them. So we mix things up too, but we still make sure that everything happens that needs to happen, but we do mix it up too. So yeah, yesterday they were able to have some free time in the morning because it rained all afternoon. So we did that, and we shuffled it around. But that's also my personal too. I feel like sometimes I get stuck in a rut with things. But again, with work, with parents now working at home, and Ryan's working at home, and I still have a chunk of time that I have to work, it does pose challenges. So I think one of the things, Dawn and Heather, you guys have carved out areas, and we definitely have too. So Ryan, poor thing, is in the basement now. But we did clean an area.
Basement's fine.
We did clean an area.
Cool down there.
Yeah.
Fine.
But my kids too have found their spots. They know exactly where, you know, they go to get their work down, and so that they can focus. And so Lydia has her little niche in the schoolroom, and I'm with the younger two usually at the kitchen table, and then the other two kind of go in the family room or the sunroom. We've just got different spaces, but I think that's an important too that Dawn and Heather touched on, is just creating spaces that the kids can be able to focus in the ways that they need to focus, especially with different learning styles and stuff like that. But that's helpful. So I don't know if that helped answer some of the questions, but I think, oh, the other thing I was going to say, when you create a routine, I think it's super important to include your kids in that, not just you as parents sitting down and saying, I mean, it's good to talk about what you think is important, but you include them in the process of it. So it doesn't feel like it's forced upon them, or if it's, you know, it's, mom and dad are telling me I have to do all these things. Like, okay, we all know these are things that need to get done. What kind of schedule should we put together to make sense? Now, for some of them, with the online school starting, they have to log into their computers at a certain time. I don't know with the different school districts, but some of that will be put in place. But some of it's not, because I mean, it's only for a certain amount of time. So I think including them in that discussion, and they may even have some really good suggestions too for how to go about it. And my kids have, and so that's been helpful to get their feedback. And I'm willing to move things around and adjust things based on that too. So.
I don't know about you but our kids, they get I mean, we're a family that's like usually together on the weekends already. You know, we're really active together and we spend a lot of time together, but man, they can get tired of each other. And sometimes, I'm going to be honest, I'm a little tired of them too.
Yes.
And so one of the big things about creating our own spaces, I think, is just like giving us a beat to just have, you know, be doing whatever we need to be doing, you know, in our space. And I think that that's been really important, especially as two working parents. That's been, it's just been, you know, whenever I'm in certain places, the kids know that that's where I need to be focused on that. And for them too, I think the same thing, like, and they're sitting there and they're doing their schoolwork, you know, unless they look like confused, we're not going to bother them.
Right. Yeah, no, that's good.
How do you deal with the squabbles, Erin? Like every
They
time
don't squabble. Your kids don't argue, do they?
There's conflict in your home.
Do tell.
I said there's conflict in your homes.
Yes, we're real human beings, Joe. Yeah.
When our kids are fighting right now, I give them chores, and so they've stopped mostly, at least in front of me, because I assign them things whenever it gets down to that. But are there other tricks that could be helpful?
Yeah, well, I think we do the chore thing for sure. Usually with conflict, it's because they're too close together, or they need to be split up. So, I mean, I've got a variety of ages here, but even with Lydia, there are times where she gets really frustrated with her younger siblings. And usually that's because they're in too close contact. So usually I say, okay, why don't you take your stuff up to your room and you can have your own space. And so separation is good. Sometimes that's hard, but when it's nice outside, that helps too. But we're also, especially depending on the conflict, if it's really trivial, then usually separation or a chore or something like that. But if it's more complex, Ryan and I are both big advocates of making sure that we talk through it with them. But that, again, that can be challenging when you're in the middle of work and when you're trying to deal with things. But I think making space for that to be able to talk through it is also key, because otherwise it's going to keep happening over and over again if you don't deal with the root of the issue, the area of conflict. So I don't know if that answers your question specifically, but it does.
It's helpful. I just don't know, like, you know, you see people put their children in these oversized t-shirts together. I'm like, do I need to get a big t-shirt from Amazon, or like, I'm running out of things to clean.
Well, send them over to no, you can't send them to my house.
Can I say too? Go ahead, Virginia. You go ahead.
What I was going to say is, I actually had a conflict with my mother at one point. I mean, I have one kid, so we're not having conflict. And one of the things that she did, and I have never forgot about it, she made me write her a 50-word essay of why I thought she was a good mother. And one of the things that I remember about that is I was angry with her and I had to come up with a compliment. And like, if your kids are biting at each other and like making them nuts, if they're able to like sit down and think through their anger and be able to write, hey, so I like so-and-so because he keeps his room clean, or he didn't touch my stuff today, or something. I mean, depending upon what the kid is, like, because it'll work with a writing assignment and they may never forget it, or they may just be so mad they can't write or say this assignment stinks, but at least gets them away from the other humans that they're agitating.
Anyway. One of the things we're thinking about as parents, I mean we, like all of us are thinking about as parents is not just what is the not just are they having conflict, but what is the degree of the conflict and what is the level of the conflict. And so to sometimes realize penance can be appropriate. And so exactly the kind of thing that Virginia just said, I think, one kid in particular tends to get a little angrier than the others. And so that kid has had assignments, of kindness, kind of assignments to do good things for the person who, he hasn't treated well or whatever. And I think that's been a good thing. The other thing that I think's kind of been neat to watch happen sometimes they do just need separation. They just need to get the heck away from one another. Other times, I've actually given them an assignment or some kind of a shared goal. It's out of the ordinary, not just, unload the dishwasher or whatever, but some kind of a, especially for the boys, some kind of an outdoor project. And so there's a goal and they have to, put their heads together and learn what it is to work together towards something. As a punishment, I guess. I mean, as a remedy, So, but yeah, taking the time to talk through it is so exhausting. And you also have to realize as parents, we're in this for the long haul, everybody. We're in this for the long haul. And rarely are you going to see a breakthrough in one conversation with the kid. You sit them down, you make really good reasons why such and such was wrong. Like, there, they've got it. Because I gave them such good reasons why it was wrong. It's an endurance race. It's the ability, and I'm preaching to myself here more than anybody. It's the ability to continue to have that same conversation over and over and over until it becomes part of their character.
Yeah. It's also like praising the good too, right? When they do a really good job, or specifically, I think everyone's kids have strengths and weaknesses, right? So seeing when they're able to take that weakness, but there's a moment where that weakness is, they actually had a kind of a breakthrough. And a lot of times, like you were saying, Ryan, it's probably not this huge moment, that someone really, maybe they don't even realize, what they've done, but to point that out and, show them that they are, kind of turning the corner in that moment and kind of point that out because they miss it. I mean, it's, everything's going so quick.
Yeah.
Too, and recognizing that the current state of affairs, and all of our kids are obviously youth, they're not elementary aged or anything like that, but they are consuming information about what is going on around us too, so kind of checking in intermittently, because I think sometimes their behavior might be a reflection of like a deeper concern that they have, but they're not articulate enough to be like, I'm actually really worried and I'm scared and I'm going to lash out at my brother because I can, or vice versa, so I've been trying really hard because I'm a very impatient person, to just try to show a lot more grace, knowing that just as we are feeling certain levels of stress or concern about what's going on, that they are probably feeling it too, and kind of like grading on a curve with their behavior a little bit for this period. Right. So I'm just trying to show a lot more grace, knowing that adolescence is that time for most of them too, where they're like pulling away and hanging out with their friends more. At least that's what we've seen with our two kids. And then to like one day go from like they're hanging out with their friends all the time to you're not going to see them. And I actually can't give you a date when you might be able to see them again.
Right.
It's so hard. So just, I think when they're in elementary, you have more control over that, but when they're, I don't know, like Liam's social life just like blew up this year, and stuff. And so to be completely cut off for that is like really hard, because that's part of their growing up and pulling away an identity. And now we're pulling them back in to just be with
I felt the exact same way. We have Isaiah is a very, very social kid. And both of our kids really love sports, and both of their sports seasons basically too. And Isaiah, this was the year he's in varsity, and like all this kind of great stuff. And I think one of the hardest things to watch has been kind of their mourning for their friends and their sports seasons, but really that's like their social activity more than anything else. And I think you kind of see both kids. Elia had a hard year and didn't make several sports teams, and finally made the softball team, right? And it was really exciting. And then they have their first practice, and then the second one is when they canceled everything. And so, like you have all these, like, you can see both of them going the whole, like, what if? And I think that this is their first real what if in their lives, that they were really looking forward to this season. So I'm with you. Like, I feel like really inadequate to take up this space where their friends, usually would be.
Yeah.
Anybody have an example of kind of how to approach that topic of they're feeling something that's probably deeper than they even understand? It's kind of the cognitive model. If you think about, I think, so I feel, so I do, to kind of work back from those actions. How do you actually start a conversation like that with your kids?
I wait until after they're not upset anymore, because in the moment, they're like so overwhelmed with all their emotions that they can't even start to use that cognitive part of their brain. So whatever the flip out is, however bad it is, I just wait for it to blow over and then kind of check in a little bit later to be like, so what are you, how are you feeling, or what are you thinking, and leave it really open-ended, but I don't ever engage them in the moment because I never get anywhere with that. So.
And that's super hard because that's really when you want to engage, whenever they're acting like that. Mm-hmm. It's been a little challenging here because Uva's working from home and so am I, but the girls know that Uva is a little more lenient than I am about stuff. And so they often, one of them often goes to him to discuss things. And the other day yesterday that was happening, and I was in the room and I kind of joined the conversation, and she said, how about you just let me and Dad figure this one out?
Oh man.
Wow. And I literally did that. I literally bit both of my lips like this. And I walked out of the room because either A, she was going to die, or she was going to be hurt. So
I tell them about
emotionally or physically, I'm not sure which one yet. But it was, it's tough because we've never dealt with that, having both parents at home all the time. It's usually been me being some kind of person who relegates everything, so I don't know. I think it's harder to do it when we're both here, but which it is exhausting to talk it through because you want to just say, because I said that's the way it is. Mm-hmm. And it just doesn't work like that, especially when you're dealing with an 18-year-old that it's just, it's tricky.
I bet.
I think that the challenge, and it's hard, I know for me, and probably for Heather and the rest of us, is we all have really different personalities. And for whatever reason, one of our children hears something that one of us says in a really negative light, and what the other parent says in a really positive light, and sort of vice versa. And so what I could say would be oh, that makes complete sense. And Heather could say the exact same thing, and you're oh, you're treating me like don't know what I'm talking about. And so, and it's virtually the same words in the same tone, but because it's coming from one parent or the other who's played one role or another, it becomes a real struggle. And having the grace when they say things well, dad's always says the right thing and you always say the mean thing, or however that it comes out, to not take that really personally.
For us, we've had to be a lot of communicate. I am somebody who, if we have a fight, you will know about it immediately, and we will have to deal with it immediately. I can't hold that in. That just isn't my personality. And if we have a disagreement, I want to talk it through immediately. And like, what we've had to do a lot of is like tag team, and we've had to be extra communicative with each other, because it's like, okay, well, we have nowhere to go. So if this goes badly, it's going to be even worse. So you kind of have to have like, okay, I feel like Hulk Hogan, or, whoever, one of those like wrestler dudes where you kind of got to tag in and tag out, because one parent, maybe in a different situation where you could go for a walk. And, especially when it's been raining, like Isaiah and I will walk a lot together. And it's great. It's kind of like that proverbial, like when you're not looking at somebody in the eyes, you can really have a great conversation.
Yeah.
But, when you can have that same conversation looking at each other, it's so much more intense. And so, especially when it's been raining, you can't really have that interaction. And so being able to talk directly to Don and be like, okay, this is not a conversation where you sit on the couch and have it. So you're going to have to tag in here. We've also had to like identify even with each other, like, here's what you're managing, here's what I'm managing, right? Like that way we're also having expectations with each other, because obviously our house is now much more lived in. I don't know about you all, but we tend to have a couple of rooms that are incredibly lived in, and other rooms that are, like weekend rooms, right? Like you might go in there once in a while, but you can kind of keep them nice or whatever. And now like every inch of our house is being utilized, and, being able to communicate expectations with each other and with the kids without being like a taskmaster has been something that has been, especially it's taken a lot more discernment than I would have expected.
Yeah.
And also giving them the time to reset. I mean, we had an issue yesterday where it's just like one of our kids needed to go away, and they went away to a different room in the house, and we left them there for like 5-10 minutes. And then Heather looked at me and was like, we should probably go check on them. And so, I got up and went down and was like, okay. And like, you're able to get control of the emotions and express the thoughts. I think a lot of times, especially with certain kids, like the emotions are all there, and like they want to say something, but the way they say it is just rude or hurtful or whatever it is, and doesn't actually express what's actually going on. So giving them that time and that space to walk away, get the emotions under control, and really like, once the emotions come down, then the brain starts kicking in saying, hey, this is why I was upset. This is what I was hearing. This is what was going on. You can have a conversation that way.
So a lot of conversation around the kids, but an interesting thing is, how do you guys find time for, to be with each other alone and with God even? Aaron, you guys talked about having that quiet time in the morning. What does that look? I mean, are you guys together, or is each person kind of off in their own spot? What does that look like?
I'm sorry, I had to put one of our kids in their cage. It's fine.
You could just share the link, the Amazon link.
Yeah. It's homemade actually, but
it's padded. It's padded.
It's those backyard projects you were talking about, right, Ryan?
Yeah.
Just have to build their own.
That's right. Yeah. Build your own cage. That's right.
Oh my gosh. Okay,
so
question.
For me specifically, it's been a challenge because I've been working from home for the last 4 some years now, and I'm very much a routine person. And so for me, I get up in the morning, I come down, I make coffee, I make myself tea, and that's when I do my Bible study and reflection time, just on my own. And then I sort of start my kids up and like start moving towards that. And then like around 8:30, 9 o'clock, I'm on my own normally. And like I go through my day just as I would, but it's been really a challenge for me to like shift that routine. I'll come down to do my Bible study and there's a kid already there and they've got the TV on and like, so just trying to have that, okay, well then I'm going to have to go somewhere different than where I'm comfortable with to go do that Bible study.
Yeah.
And so it's been a challenge, but it's one of those things where it's reality, but it's not like I can change it. So
Right.
trying to adapt and not successfully more often than successfully, but you know, there's that grace that you need to have with each other.
This is about alone time. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, how do you get alone with God and just with your spouse? So kind of a two-part question.
I mean, I don't know, but I do know. I mean, the only way this happens for us, honestly, and this is quarantine or just normal life, whatever, is if we help one another to do that. So we just say, hey, I'm going to take the kids and I'm going to X space, you know, so the rest of it. I mean, in other words, it's a team effort. Getting solitude is actually a team effort. So you have to be committed to that and see that that's good for the other person. So be willing to sacrifice, you know, the time and the effort to help make that happen.
Right, and that probably goes back to like a routine schedule. Makes it so much easier when you're trying to find that slot. So okay, we're gonna give you 10 minutes or 15, a half hour, whatever. So what about with each other? How do you guys find time to just be with each other and get away from these crazy kids?
Proper bedtime.
Our kids legit now, I mean, they still have a bedtime right now, or at least
Yeah.
bedtime at 10 o'clock. We're like, see ya, y'all are, but I mean, we've been making them like at least be heading towards bed when we go to our room, but we are pretty strict about being in a different space from others. And then we're asleep usually by like 11, but that's a good time to catch up. We also weirdly have chat on all day. So we will still be talking even though we're in totally different sections of the house. So if I'm on my computer or whatever, or he is, or, you know, there's still a conversation that's happening all day, which is actually very similar to how we operate whenever I'm at work.
They're my small group.
We're together a lot more than we are during this time.
That sounds like excitement and joy that you're getting from that, Leslie, and I honor that.
I will say that my time to have that special time is whenever I go to bed. Like I put on my noise canceling headphones and listen to like what is it? It's like a meditation thing.
The Calm app.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like breathe in. Breathe. What's happening?
My sister was telling me the other day that she was out walking. She got a new puppy in quarantine time. And so anyway, it was one of the days that it was really, really cold. And there was a woman like sitting outside in her bathrobe drinking her coffee. And my sister's like, what are you doing? And she goes, I'm just trying to find a quiet space.
Survive. Really. Oh my God. Well, we've had some extra circumstances at our house because we, you know, right before the COVID thing started, we completely gutted like half of our upstairs. So we're down to like, you know, just the bare bones of no kitchen.
Your sewing room?
Yeah, this is pretty much where I could go. And above me, like literally right above me, is the new kitchen. And so we've had some construction workers here, and it's like, God
bless you.
So, and you can't get away from it. You really can't. I mean, you really can't get away from it. So that's been interesting for sure, an extra little challenge, but hence the noise canceling headphones.
Yes. Good for you.
One of the other things that we've always done, and I don't know that it's changed that much, is we try to at least once or twice a week do our morning workouts together.
Yeah,
that's right. You guys do.
And
that's been helpful.
So it's been nice enough that we've actually had a couple of runs together.
He did yoga with me yesterday.
Yesterday.
Uh-huh.
I did yoga. Ryan will not.
I was in a yoga class and I was moving my body, whether I was doing what I was supposed to do.
I feel very proud.
Question. But I at least was there and trying to make an effort. And,
good for you, Don.
And so, but that's been something that we've done and continue to do. And I think sort of actually related to that, not just us staying connected, but also staying connected with kids, is we've tried to do something with the kids too. Mm-hmm. So like one day we went out and played basketball with them. We've been on a couple of hikes with them. We've
tossed the ball.
Just
I've worked them to death. We have cleaned from top to bottom, spring clean. They have learned real life skills.
Oh.
Every day we've had like a project of some kind or some kind of big act. Like today we went to Scioto Grove Metro Park, which was lovely. It was mostly flooded, so if you want to go out hiking, shoot me a text and I'll tell you a better place to go. But it was a beautiful day, so that kind of. Yesterday we watched a movie, yeah. So just trying to have like one carve out so that we're together, but then it feels okay that we're apart because we are a family. That's usually like on the weekends we really do try to kind of move as a unit. We always have since they were kids, and little kids, and in that time, like it's almost like it feels like we have to be together or we're like weirdly angry with each other, even if we're not, you know what I mean? It just feels like strange that, you know, somebody's spending time in their own room or whatever. And by doing that big activity together every day, it almost gives you permission to be like, nah, I'm good. Thank you. We need to all kind of go and have our own separate time.
That brings up something that I have a question about. You guys may touch on this or not, but usually we don't do screens during the week and it's just on the weekends, and we kind of we don't go nuts with it, but you know, we give them game time and that kind of thing. And because of them not being able to play with neighbors and all of that, I've let some of the screens happen, like video games each day kind of thing. And that's been fine, but I don't like the feeling, the pressure that my children apply to me to want to be on them all the time, or want to watch a show, want to watch a movie, want to do, they're allowed some time to like search the internet because they don't have phones at this moment, kind of on purpose, because they don't regulate themselves at all. We've tried that. So I'm kind of wondering what you guys are doing or how you're managing that right now when they don't have, you know, it's just kind of a free-for-all.
For us, I think that's one of the reasons that we've really required them to have other things, not like, so we usually do limit screen time during the week. We have the circle. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. It basically will shut the computers down after they hit a certain limit. And you can, like, that's kind of lifted right now because they even with schoolworks. So obviously they already have a lot more screen time than they normally would at this point. But it's been more about like, have you gotten your hour in for exercise? Have you done, you know, like all the stuff that they need to do has been more important. We also restrict the spaces that they can have their screens in.
Yeah.
That's really important to us, just to be, you know, kind of there as an oversight. And so they are getting more screen time than they typically get in a non-coronavirus world. But I feel like we've tried to regulate it in different ways, more for like putting things in, because the pressure thing that you just said, that struck a chord with me, because you feel sorry for them, right? Like, because, you know, like this stinks, you know, it stinks for all of us. It's obviously stinks for them, and they haven't developed kind of the self-control, and they don't have the perception that this too shall end, right? You know, this too shall pass. And so I think that for us, kind of putting things in versus regulating them out has been a little bit more helpful. We also have times when, like last night when we were watching the movie, I mean, we were in front of a screen, but you know, in today's world, people have multiple screens, right? And so everybody had to put their phones down. Like that was like designated family time. We've also done like board games and stuff like that. and you can't have those like that kind of stuff at the table when we're doing that kind of thing.
Yeah, and one of the other things that we did, and sometimes more successfully than not, is what new thing are you going to learn?
Yeah.
Like, what new thing are you going to try out that you haven't done before? And if you like, one of our children is very prone to being on their electronics for long periods of time. So it's like, okay, you've been on that enough. It's time to put her down and do something else. And then they'll go and like draw or work on a puzzle or do something else, where it's like, okay, normally you only get your half an hour of time. You've been on it for 2 hours. It's time to go shift your brain, do something else, come to dinner, whatever it happens to be. And that sort of, rather than saying, no, you've hit your hard limit, it's more, okay, go find something else to do for a while away from the screen. And then if they come back to the screen, they've at least spent half an hour, or, in some cases, like the other activity was so interesting that they spent like 4 hours on this non-screen time thing, because it was something like, it was almost like they were craving something to do, and the only thing they had to do in front of them was the screen. And so by saying, hey, screen's done, go find something else, finding that something else to do gave them an outlet to do, because they can't go next door and play volleyball with their friends or go outside. And like a lot of the other things that you can say, hey, enough screen time, go do something else, a lot of those options are gone.
The other thing I would just add on the self-regulation thing, what I've had interesting discussions with both kids a couple times in the last couple weeks, because they don't feel good after they have a lot of screen time. They're more weepy, they're more quick to anger, they're just bajiggity. I don't know, even Aliyah today when we were at Scioto Grove, all of a sudden is like running all over the place, because you could just tell she had like a lot of pent up energy, right? And so helping them like recognize what's going on with their body after they've been on a screen a long time, and how good a break kind of feels, without like being like, oh, well, that computer just is making you so sad. But, like trying to like point out to them like what their emotions are in that moment, and asking them that through questions. I don't think the pointing out is actually the right thing. It's more like, how does it feel to be away from your screen? Or how did that feel to go out and play basketball for a while, or whatever it is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, just talking to a lot of students, over the past couple of weeks, I think the biggest thing I've heard is like, they can't even think of things in some, instances to do rather than go to screens, TV or video games or whatnot. So I think some of it's just throwing out ideas for them, like that's been a lot of what I've been trying to do. And a lot of it's like, no, whatever,
Oh, that's what happens here.
Yeah. I mean, just continue to float things off, and maybe make them, mandatory, do this for a half hour. And then I think sometimes, kids don't know what they like or their passions. This is a time for them to probably realize some of their passions and gifts and abilities, for the first time, when they start to get off their screens and go look and, interact with different things, whatever that may be.
I was going to mention too, I think being creative about ideas for them to participate in or to do or to try out is key. But I obviously I'm an art major, and then we love music in our home. And so one of the things that I've done, and this is for the kids from Lydia all the way to the younger ones, I bought some art supplies. Everyone loves clay. Like, with one of the things I on Amazon, I just bought a bunch of clay. And that was something new that they could participate in. And obviously that was for a window. And I think they're over the clay window now, but thinking like outside of the box. Okay, what is something new that we could try this week that would be simple? And we have some land, so it's helpful. But they were collecting all kinds of rocks last week. I mean, even the older ones love going out and doing stuff like that in nature. But whether it's going to a park and doing that, like I think Dawn and Heather mentioned. But one of the things for those who are like musical, I don't know who all does an instrument, but our music teacher actually sent something out about how important it is for them to be continuing with that, because it affects their emotions. They're so interconnected in these ways. But she encouraged parents not to just slip on like ensuring that they practice or that they're spending time with music and filling their minds with these good things. And so it's challenging. And I think, you know, John and Heather were saying, like, we do not have this figured out. No one here does, but it's every day kind of praying and asking God to help us to think about what something new that our kids can do, or what's something that I can encourage them in. And whether that be, like, we've got 5 different kids and they have different interests and talents and stuff like that, but trying to encourage them in that. And so for Johnny, he loves woodworking, so I've been trying to, like, if he gets bored or something, I'm like, why don't you go work on that project right now? And I thought it was awesome too, Joe, that you had that creative challenge. I was like, yes, thank you, because I was trying to do that at home anyway, but that gave them some motivation. And then Leslie had for the Joylanders, she had the, like, do this coloring sheet, and so that was yet another thing. I thought it was awesome to do that, but I think thinking outside of the box too, to allow them to experiment with some new things. And I think art and music are a huge way to do that. So if they play an instrument, encourage them to find some new music online. I told Lydia that this week. I was like, why don't we go and purchase some new line or download some new music so you can be practicing a new song. But she still does her lessons through Zoom. So there are ways that we can still use technology to help them to be developing their hobbies and their skills. And so
to Anne's point, though, I mean, it's having boys that are about your boys' age. It's difficult. We need to pray for good weather. That's something we need to do. We need to pray for some good weather.
Yes.
And there have been times over the last couple of weeks, the only thing that helps them is just getting them out of here. Get them to a park and letting them run some steam off.
It really is true.
And that's it. Because all these things at some level, I mean, now I'm talking really specifically to you. At some level, our boys are just going to look at it and say, no, I want to go tear something up. I want to destroy something. I want to run fast, right? And so I took them fishing earlier today, and it helped a little bit for a while.
And I think also modeling too. Like, we definitely found ourselves on screens, sort of. Okay, it's the evening. We're all sitting here, so I'm on my screen, and so it's hard for you to be on a screen and to not be on the screen.
It is.
Right.
And so forcing yourself to put down that screen, be like, okay, well, now that the screen's down, what am I going to do? What did I like to do before we had all the screens?
Before all this, I know.
And so then doing those things and inviting the kids along, I think also is something that could be really productive.
There's a lot of, I don't know how you guys feel about, like with the supporting some of the small businesses in town. So like here, we're in Worthington, and AR Workshop, they usually do, like bridal shower parties where they'll create stencils and you can home sweet home, like on a piece of wood. I don't know. Anyway, very creative. They're creating these DIY kits. And so it's kind of a nice way. I mean, that's obviously a business that's going to really suffer in a quarantine period. So if you're interested in that kind of thing,
what's it called?
AR Workshop. They're online, and you can order the DIY supplies. They come out on Tuesdays is when they announce them. And then, even like things like our farmers market in Worthington is doing like a drive-up thing, including the kids and, picking out the groceries or, the meal prep and cooking. Like, it's kind of a nice opportunity to involve them, but then also showing them that we're supporting. For us, that's really important. We picked Worthington because we wanted that kind of small town feel, right? Where you really were trying to be there for those businesses. And so whether it's the farmers market or the workshop or, any of these ordering, food from the local business, that's some of the other things that we're kind of trying to think through. But it gets back to the AR Workshop stuff, especially, like, it's pretty fun. They give you the stencils. You can do trays or a dog. Isaiah and I were looking today, and we want to paint a dog bed because Archer, we feel like, needs a new bed. So that's going to be our project on Tuesday when we can order. So.
Yeah, I think even with like sports, athletes, there's still stuff you can even do inside, but working on specific skills, dexterity things and finding small drills like that to just kind of continue to work on. And, that's one way you'll kind of build a bridge between, kids want to be out playing sports with their friends and whatnot, but it's a way they can, continue to move down that, that avenue. So I had a friend he has 3 kids, and he was just saying, talking about, it was the frustrations, that were coming out with being locked in with his family for a week and a half at that point. But he was like, I also look at it as, I'll never probably have another period like this in my life where I'll be, stuck in my house with my kids, for this long, and kind of looking at the blessing that it is. And Aaron brought up something really good, but spiritual leadership, as parents, even as youth pastor to a lot of your guys' kids, there's only so much, I can do. You guys are with them every single day. And that's what I look at as a calling, as a parent, is spiritual leadership in your kids' lives. So what is do you guys do family devotions? What does that look like for you guys? I know Aaron, Aaron, Ryan, if you guys want to speak to this, what does that look like? How do you kind of maximize some time and really become, it's a time to be spiritual leaders, in your kids' lives?
Yeah, I think now is a great time to refocus on something like that, because you have some time to think about it and pour into it. And we try to do a daily devotional thing. We don't get it done every day. We try to. And the enemy here is not competency. A lot of parents feel like, I'm not equipped to do that kind of thing. The enemy is not being competent. The enemy is being a perfectionist about this. And so a lot of times you just have to think, okay, what's the impression about God's goodness that I'm wanting to give my children? Rather than, okay, we're going to do family devotionals every night, and we're going to do a series on prayer, then we're going to do a series on, whatever it is. We're going to go through this or that book. Like, it's great if you can do those kinds of things and you can stick to them. I oftentimes can't, but I want my kids to know that the evening is a time where we're going to turn our attention back to God. Mm-hmm. So even if it's just, look, we read a passage, and those evening moments are so important. And we got kids aged 6 to 14. And for every single one of them, you want them to open up about something, really emotionally begin to share. It's always evening. And I've talked to other parents, and they say the same thing. Kids begin to open up when it gets to be evening. So a lot of times I'll just put time out there for anybody to share anything that they want to talk about, anything that's been bothering them, anything that's been, made them especially joyful. We'll sing songs, at our home. You don't have to do that. And then we gather.
Ryan plays the guitar.
I do. I play the guitar. And then we gather around and pray together. And again, it's not so much that I think I'm giving them this deep theological education or biblical knowledge. I mean, there's some of that goes on. It's more that I want them to understand what is important to us as a family and what matters. Mm-hmm. And so again, the biggest enemy to this kind of thing is not competency, it's perfectionism, feeling like it has to be this, that, or the other way.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I feel like right now our church has great resources. So like Joe,
that's right.
You sent out your video. So we watch that as a family and we discuss it. And obviously the little ones can grasp only parts of it, but we're still doing that as a family. Right. And then with the Joyland video, Leslie, we've been doing that together as a family, and you've got the questions that guide us. And so that's like a built-in family devotional time right there that we can have. And then we'll tag on prayer or whatever else that we might have. So those are 2, even if you just do those 2 every week, like that's, well, if you have elementary school kids, we're ones that overlap both.
Right. But we won't always,
Right. But it's kind of built in that way. But yeah, I think it's been a great rhythm for us to have with our kids. And I think when we don't have it, we notice a difference. And so right now, if you don't have that rhythm, it's a great time to start, because you're there and you have no distractions and no evening commitments that are going to pull you apart right now. So it's a great place to start. Even if it's like, I know like for Virginia and Anne, that might be more challenging to do, because I don't know if your husbands are wanting to participate or whatever, but it might be something that you just do in their bedroom together before they go to bed at night, where you have that time just with you, like Anne, you and the boys, because I don't know if Danny would want to be participating in something like that. So that's more challenging. But if you just did it in their bedroom, just something sweet and short, I don't know. It doesn't have to be short. I didn't mean it that way, but.
Emma and I will randomly talk about subjects as they just come up during the day. That's the way my mom did it with me. And I mean, it just really depends upon what's happening. I mean, it's, and she's like, she feels the burn with this thing with no friends, like, because
I bet
they live so close to her. She's got kids that I could shout to from my front door.
Yeah.
And I mean, that bothers her, but she understands why. But I mean, she's, yeah.
Yeah.
It just really depends. I mean, and sometimes we have different random discussions. It's a habit that I developed when dining room table, dinner time. Like we always try to do dinner time because Lee's actually still working out of the house.
Oh, okay.
And so we just make sure that we're in the same room talking about what's going on that day at dinner time. And it's just something I've done since that's what my mom did. We did dinner for like, it's just the way it is. It's like we expect. And I mean, on Sunday, on the weekend, we would like, the big deal is like after church lunch. I mean, we still do dinner, like meals the other time, but it's after church lunch. So it just depends upon what the day of the week is.
Yeah. I'm going to say to Joe, one of the things I really liked about your youth video was whenever you said we're going to stop and talk about questions, because I think a lot of times you listen to a speaker and they're like, when this is over, talk with your family or talk together about this, and you never do, you know. But whenever or we never do, but whenever you stop in the middle of the video, you know, and it's like this dead silence for a little bit, then you're like, okay, so now we should really talk about that. And I really like that because it makes them really open up. And
yeah, I agree.
That was good.
It's a good point.
Yeah.
So keep that up in the youth ones or recordings, whatever they are.
Absolutely. And I mean, good steps toward that. I mean, if you're not doing, you know, devotions, or if you want to take a step, I mean, the not being a perfectionist is so important. I'm just, you know, taking a step. You know, maybe it's a leap for some of you, but the YouVersion app, you know, on your phone, or Daily Bread, there's so many places. You could just go to Amazon and even just type in family devotional. And there's just probably a million, honestly, that'll pop up. You know, you can kind of sift through until you find the one you like. But, you know, part of it's just, you know, not even just doing it to do it, but to, you know, kind of let the Spirit lead you as you're doing it as well, you know. Making that time, like you said, for your kids to open up about things. I think that's, you know, so important, especially if it's tough to kind of get into your kids about things, you know, get them to open up about things. I think that's always the difficult part of, you know, teenagers, is getting them to open up about things. Sometimes it's either, you know, on one side or the other. They're super open about everything, or you can't get anything out of them. That's how it seems. But, you know, even youth group on Wednesday nights is usually a time where I still am blown away by how kids open up, you know, on Wednesday nights. And there is something about that evening, but I think for a lot of kids, that is a time to open up and, you know, process things. And they don't have that right now either. You know, they don't have the time to be with their friends. They don't have the time to process things, you know, very deep matters. So, you know, this is a time for you guys that maybe you'll never get again in this, you know, prolonged of a period, you know, to really lean in and just listen. You know, sometimes it's not even saying anything at all. It's just listening.
It's listening.
So,
yeah.
Any other, we can just do kind of open questions real quick. I mean, it's 8. I don't want to I know you guys have so many things to do.
We're so busy.
Any questions to end? We'll just kind of kick the can.
You know, I have an idea that I was trying to figure out how to do, but maybe this group would be a good one to think through. Like going to the point of kids not really even understanding what their hobbies are. I'm like, there's so many talented people in our congregation. I'm just wondering, like Isaiah the other day, it was interesting. He decided he wanted to draw the Toy Story characters.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit of a mess, I'm not gonna lie. But I tried really, really hard, right? And then this morning I'm like, so what are your plans for the day? And you know, we were going through when we were gonna do church and when we were gonna hike and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, are you gonna try to draw again today? And he's like, no, Mom, that did not work out well. And I'm like, but wouldn't it be cool? I don't know, like if we got somebody to offer like a class or not a class, but like a time to, I don't know, draw pretty little trees. What was that guy's name?
Happy Little Trees.
Ross.
I don't know.
Ross, Happy Little Tree.
Happy Little Trees, or I don't know what it would be. I'm sure there's other things. Or Elias' guitar teacher did Zoom the other night. And they had it was good class and everything, but even like jamming together could be kind of fun. I don't know, like if there could be, I was just trying to figure out like what could we do with technology. There was a bunch of kids who were watching a movie with an app called Rave, where you watch it together and you can comment. And it's like, what else could we be doing to keep them busy? I don't know. There's so many talented people in the congregation, and
we were just talking about you guys, actually. Dawn, actually, Lydia and I were talking because Johnny likes to cook, but he doesn't do a whole lot because Ryan doesn't really cook. So he doesn't experiment with that. And I was like, Dawn would be such a great person to teach him how to do some cooking, or just to see a guy cooking and stuff like that. And we were just talking about you. So
we could send out like a cooking list, and then like at a certain time, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think there are ways to utilize. I mean, what you're talking about, I think Jim Glover already teaches painting classes, but he draws as well. But like Jim Glover could be a resource.
Dr. Contrast, Joe.
Or
I'm serious. He could. Yeah, he could.
Okay.
Jim Orr.
Jim Orr, right? Is that his name? I knew that was what you were talking about. But Jim Orr, like, he would love to do that and teach the kids skills. Like, I don't know if there's some way to pull in the talent within our church to help.
Do you know Jim Orr?
Have you met Jim Orr?
Oh, okay.
No, you haven't, Heather?
I don't think I have. I might have. I don't ever know anybody's name.
All right, hang on.
So whenever you guys see me at church and I don't know your name, it's not because I don't know you or I don't have good feelings.
We're gonna show you one of his works because
Dr. Contrast. He actually designed this and like.
Whoa.
Pretty cool, huh?
I feel like my kids would be totally down to do that.
He does some
My kid would be too.
He does online stuff for kids now. But I mean, it costs. Watch when we can talk him into.
I would happily pay whatever to get my kids busy.
Yeah.
They're right now in the dark playing basketball.
Okay.
Okay. See Elsie.
Well, Elsie's leaving. Okay.
Emma gets on, and I don't know what she Googles images and she draws them. And I mean, Joe has a better picture of it, and not gonna work. Well, yeah.
That's cool.
She drew it directly from the computer, and I can. She like gets on and like finds these things. She's done Pokemon. She's randomly drawn a girl with pigtails and a wings or something. I don't know. She just gets on and finds these images to draw. Now that's her. Like you mentioned earlier, Heather, about journaling and such. I asked Emma if she wanted to journal, and she said no. And I said, so what are you doing, drawing through this? And she says, yes. And she has a sketchbook. She's going to have to confiscate mine here soon because she's running out of pages.
Well, that's like a bullet journal, though. I mean, that's kind of, we have friends who keep those beautiful bullet journals where they'll have like one word of the day, like just one word, but then they'll draw these beautiful pictures. And I think that tells you a lot about your day, too.
Well, and I texted Erin in the middle of this. We do, I can craft, and actually if we wanted to, I can pretty much figure out how to craft out of almost any material. We just recently took gray egg cartons, don't use Mod Podge, it stinks too bad and doesn't work, and joint compound, and smeared it over a balloon. And I'll post it on Facebook, and we're gonna make a fairy house. And they did how they actually do the rest of it. They use an old pizza box and a utility knife. And I mean, there's just like all kinds of random, like seriously, 6 old soup cans and a splash of paint, and you could come up with characters or something. Like, it really depends upon how creative the child is.
Maybe that's something, Joe, that could be a challenge for the kids. Like the next one, like use the following 6 things that everybody can find in their house.
Yeah, that's a good idea. The next one was going to be cook something. So it's funny you guys brought that up.
Good.
And then, yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe
You can get the kids to do a cooking video. That would be fun.
Oh my gosh.
Hey, and by the way, I love
Yes.
your this morning. That was so cute. All of us were laughing. Your bloopers and your sermon. That was adorable.
Leslie was the star.
Leslie's hilarious.
He
Face
was
page.
the star.
Face bake page.
All four of us we had like tears running down our face laughing, and then Deidre's testimony comes on, and then we have
I know.
so we basically spent the entire time in tears, but it was
different polar opposite emotions.
Oh, and Ryan said something that we don't.
Yeah, whatever that was.
No Ryan's part as well.
Awesome. Well, anybody else got any last thoughts or questions? Anything?
If anybody actually figures this out,
that's right.
Yeah, it's not in my spiritual gift. I can't do it.